in advance, on behalf of the Museum of Graffiti, I want to thank you for taking the time to spend with us and share your story. It's quite an incredible journey in your life. And so thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carlos. I'm super honored to get a invite for this, and been following them quite a bit. It's been cool to see people I've admired for a long time on these. Some I've never even seen speak before. So
Yeah, it's definitely been a blessing to have conversations with artists like yourself who I've never met, and get to learn more about the diversity in this culture and its practice. And certainly you have a great story. And if you don't mind, we'll jump right into it. And I will turn my screen around to point to your very cool tag. As I normally do, as I read off a bit about you.
yeah, what's cool about that moniker is I actually had Curve TGE make that for me.
Nice. Interesting that you would call it a moniker, right?
Yeah.
That that that's very different. So let me just read this out so folks know who you are. Skip Class is an illustrator, artist living in the Northwest of the United States. He has written graffiti for close to 18 years. His art has been featured in numerous art shows in New York, Tokyo, London, Vancouver, Los Angeles, and Miami. His illustration and graphic works have been commissioned by brands including Thumpers, New York City, I'm Not a Toy, and Ebbets Field Flannels. His work has been used for album covers, books, and commercial murals. Besides art and illustration, he's worked as a copywriter, social media manager, art curator, and a creative consultant. He and his son, young Lennox, were featured in a short documentary which premiered at Tribeca Film Festival in 2015. Wow, how exciting is this? So, before we start, let's get a little bit of background on you, because you started graffiti rather late in life.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. You mentioned you were already in your 20s when you started writing graffiti.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one. I mean, I've never really talked to anyone that started as late, but and then still managed to like accumulate the same amount of time as most of my peers, just with a later start point. Um, Basically, I got sent to a boarding school halfway through high school and had to finish up there. And that's kind of like when some of my friends started bombing and stuff, and I had come home, and we ended up driving down to downtown San Diego, and we went to like the first tribal store and stuff, and like was able to get like a fat cap and all that, and that was kind of like my first immersion with it. And then I, for whatever reason, I just thought people were born or had like natural talent for art or anything creative. So it was kind of funny because I just thought like I was terrible at it because I just didn't have any artistic skill or any creative skill. And it wasn't until maybe like, it was like about 21, 22, I just kind of decided I was going to write graffiti, like, and just try to get good at it. And I just came up with this kind of mindset that like I was going to get proficient at something. Like I wasn't really great at skateboarding. I wasn't real good at surfing, and you know, like I just kind of felt like I hadn't ever tried to become like really good at one outlet. And it just kind of so happened that graffiti kind of stuck.
Yeah, but you became quite good at it. We are looking at images of your work, which are your later works. We don't have images of your early works, but clearly you found your way through graffiti. So how is it that you developed, you know, amongst your peers? What were you looking at in San Diego that was
Um,
informing you?
I think like the most impact style wise, um, and kind of like aspirational was this Crew TV. Um, I saw these guys. I was driving, I was kind of getting off the onto the freeway onto the five, and they had done like an illegal production with like characters and like just super funky like classic style pieces right at this entrance to the five freeway, and they'd gone in there, painted. They had tarped up the fence, gone in, painted like a full production, and then took the tarps down. And I remember seeing that, and that's kind of I had already been painting quite a good number of years by then, but that was when I saw just like I wanted to do like funk style classic graffiti, like just big, bubbly, um, fun characters, just curvy, um, stuff that's just um, I don't know, like I'm not a big fan of like super technical graffiti. It's like I can appreciate it because I can't do it, but at the same time, aesthetically, I just like um, stuff to kind of look like Saturday morning cartoon graffiti, you know? Um,
Right, and you weren't trained in school for art, right? You had no ambitions to be an artist when you were young, you mentioned.
right. I didn't really take art classes. I didn't draw or, like I would doodle or whatever, but I had no proficiency in art at all, and no one. Um, yeah, I think a lot of it kind of just has to do with like, no, I didn't really have like a good friend that was. I had one buddy that was kind of good at art, but I guess just I don't know, like I didn't have someone that I felt comfortable with to try and like learn from, and so I just never did. And then it wasn't until I got older that I just got some sort of um, idea that I was just going to like get good at both like graffiti and art. Like I don't know why, but I'm glad I decided to make that decision.
Let's build on that thought, Skip, about how graffiti helped your confidence. Um, uh, what did it provide you that you didn't have before outside of talent?
Um, I mean, at first it didn't, just because my buddies that did write that I was hanging out with, like when I first kind of started out, they all sort of just kept asking like why I wanted to, and sort of like said like you won't, like you've started too late. But I think I think it got to a certain level, maybe like you know 10 years in, where you know people started like checking for me and like hitting me up to go piece, and like if out of towners came in, they'd hit me up, they want to go paint. And I started getting asked for like flicks in magazines, and um, people kind of like knew who I was, or what have you. And I think that that was so powerful for me, because it was like I learned the ability that if you focused on something and just accepted that your taste level might be really high, but your skill level is going to be low, and if you're able to ride that out until they match, that it will pay off. But it's just yeah, and I guess like I took that and kind of applied it to other aspects of art too.
And one of the things that I think is interesting, since you started so late, what kind of aspirations did you have, I think, in terms of a professional life? I know you were, you had mentioned you went to college in Dallas to me, but what were you hoping to do in life outside of graffiti?
Um, Around the same time I had started, I had gotten into like streetwear and skate branding, and started going to trade shows and stuff, like Agenda, ASR, Magic, and um, so I started doing like a clothing line called Military, and I ended up being mentored by this guy Andy Howell, who had done like New Deal skateboards, and was a pro skater, and also like a pretty prolific artist himself. And I just sort of knew that that was the community I wanted to be a part of, and I wanted to just learn as much as I could, hang out with people that were willing to kind of impart that, their knowledge, and I didn't mind if it was like interning or just helping out in exchange for sort of like knowledge or wisdom or opportunity. And um, while I was doing that, I was working on art and just slowly building my skill level up. So, for a long time, I wasn't an illustrator or, um, being asked to do graphics or live painting or murals. Like I was maybe involved in another aspect of it, whether it was like, networking people or telling like, hey, you should use this guy or this girl to, you know, for that project. And so I just kind of kept building my skill level along the way. So, you know, I just kind of had a foot in the door of like, if I was able to do copywriting for a brand, maybe, I would do that and then keep doing it until, my art could actually stand on its own. And then that kind of happened maybe, um, I don't know, like 8 years ago, 9 years ago.
You had also mentioned to me your influences, your early influences, and some of your later influences. But the earlier ones, one which I really like a lot is Ice Pick. And we discussed how Ice Pick and T-Bone sound so gangster, and Menso. Tell me about how they influenced you.
Um, they were just guys that were hanging out with me in like downtown San Diego and crashing on the couch. And, they could piece, do throw ups, and have hand styles and stuff. So they just kind of helped me. They would let me paint next to them with them, take me out to spots, and kind of show me the ropes. And then stylistically, I would say like you know, Ice Pick was more of like a partner. We painted a lot in Seattle for a long time. Um, but like stylistically, I think a lot of it comes from this guy BC BTM, who um, was just super super good and kind of gave me outlines and showed me, like he was really like into like AOK and Riss and those styles, and he was able to kind of do like a bunch of different styles, and he kind of showed me how to like really loosen up my style and like um, just kind of just by giving me a couple outlines, I was able to just do those over and over and over again until like I kind of figured out how pieces kind of worked. Um, and then I mean, I still like, I'm still very much a huge graffiti nerd. I'll still look up people or look for weird flicks, old black books and stuff, um, and try and find like more like obscure stuff that's not like, just in like books off Amazon or something.
Sure. And I remember you telling me that Chino's source pages was also something that was influencing you.
Yeah, I mean, for any kid that grew up like in the suburbs in like the '90s and stuff, like there was no like real way to get like can control or anything like that. Like this is pre art crimes, pre internet. So um, yeah, if you wanted to see like pieces, the only thing you really could see was like in the back page of the source, which it's just funny that Chino happened to do that and then like end up meeting him later on. But it's like that, and sometimes Thrasher magazine would have graffiti, but that was kind of it as far as like actual magazines and stuff. Um, so it like you know pretty much like unless you saw it in person, there was no other way to see it.
Was there something defining in terms like a regional style for San Diego, do you think?
Um, I mean, the TV crew that like the guys that I was really inspired by, like they were featured in Can Control One in like the bombing issue and stuff. So I mean, they've been around for like 35 years, um, and they have sort of a hybrid like Bay Area style that's kind of like their own. And then um, a lot of I think San Diego has a lot of like techniques it added and stuff like with characters and stuff like that. And when people would fly in for B-Boy Summit, um, but yeah, I mean it's kind of I would say it's more leaning towards like an LA Southern California style if, in terms of like a regional style.
Yeah, did you ever meet like Zodak and from the
Yeah,
and Brown from the tribal
yeah,
camp?
yeah. So like, um, like when I was like 15, 16, I saw a wall that Persuade had done, and on that same trip to downtown, I saw Zodak's wall, and that stuff just seemed like, like witchcraft almost. Like the how those characters are executed. Like Zodak's one of those guys that's like, can do anything effortlessly and better than anyone. It's kind of like I don't even know how hard he tried on that wall, but like yeah, those guys, really really push and in effect because like those were some of the first graphics for tribal that had a huge influence on like um, so many people, especially like through skate and like streetwear and stuff, where like Zodak was the one featured heavily in the first like lines of tribal. So like there's probably a ton of people that had a Zodak shirt that just didn't know his name, but um, you know, hugely influential, and then and Persuade as well. But they at that time they were really like character focused, and since I couldn't draw, like I couldn't even imitate it, so it didn't really matter for me.
But I mean, you became a prolific illustrator. Like, what was the impetus for that? What brought you to illustration? What forced your hand to start illustrating characters?
Um, I mean, like you watch Style Wars and stuff, and you like see like the trains that would stick out were the ones with characters. I mean, uh, and I think it was kind of like I was always obsessed with cartoons and stuff like that, and I just um, for whatever reason, kind of was like, well, um, I'm gonna start trying to draw, and I do characters and stuff, and I think it kind of was more about graffiti, trying to add that to my ability of like with graffiti, and then it just rolled into art.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like, well, if you want to be good, you got to be able to do pieces, throw ups, tags, and characters, right? So um, I I just started working on maybe I don't know, like 10 years ago, like just again sort of the same way as how I started with graffiti, just decided to start doing it, and
You know,
it just took a long time.
yeah,
I certainly don't have any proficiency at it.
no, but what's interesting, you're telling me this, and we're looking at this T-Bone piece, right?
Hmm.
And from 2015, and it seems like in such a short time, you have real command of painting, of letters, just straight. As we're looking at your pieces, particularly just around letters with no characters, even that you had a really strong focus on wild style writing.
Yeah, I mean, um, I again, like I was trying to play catch up. So if I was gonna paint with the people that I wanted to paint with, or next to them, um, I just had, and I think that helped a lot with like how to do fills and designs and stuff, because I um, just um, I freestyle most of it. Usually would just bring the outline with me, but the colors and everything. Um, Actually, the color schemes and stuff like that came from using just American accent paint. I think they only had like 12 colors in that palette, maybe 12, 15. And for whatever reason, I really stuck to that palette, and it taught me a lot of how to use color. It's kind of like unofficial color theory. Um,
Explain
but
that a little bit.
so, basically because the palette was limited, you were sort of forced to use colors that you wouldn't normally use unless you wanted to get like Montana or fancy paint or something. But that really wasn't the case, and if you wanted to rack it, you could just rack American accents. And so um, I kind of learned that if you took like browns and blues had this like natural contrast with one another, and then I would put colors into sort of tones. So um, like like aquamarine, like a dark teal green is the same as burgundy, is the same as navy. And then on the other side of that, I would put um, like lilac, sky blue, peach, um, like a sunflower yellow, and treat those the same. And then I could interchange them. And then the only thing I would need to combine the two would be like an earth tone, like a charcoal gray, a sienna brown, or like a khaki, or like an olive or something. And then black and white kind of gets you out of trouble with anything, right?
Hmm.
So you can, you know, throw the kitchen sink at something and outline it in black, um, or white. And then I think like, um, yes, I mean, I guess my pieces got funkier and stuff, but it's also just, it's funny how you think, you start doing it for a long time and you're like, oh, these pieces are really great. And then you go and look back and you're super mad at them, and
But listen, I'm glad you mentioned this about color theory, right? Because I think that's in terms of art, and particularly contemporary art and how we look at art, that graffiti doesn't get enough credit for advancing color theory and color use. Um, and it's quite interesting when I'm sorry to go back, when you look at your color palettes, right? Like you were describing, right? Working with limitations, understanding something uh, rather instinctive about how you're looking at colors.
yeah, I mean, I think, graffiti teaches a lot of aspects of art that I think, line weight, um, composition, stuff like that. But, with color theory, I don't think there's any other like form of art that, basically pushes you to use that many colors that frequently. Um, you know what I mean? Because it's like, I mean, just by the aspect of the can, it's like once they're gone, you already have to get different colors by just the fact that you don't have any more paint. Um, so there's sort of just this like constant like trying things. I mean, I think everyone's made mistakes of like bringing the wrong colors at night. I'm sure you did it,
Yeah.
where if you use too many light colors and you're painting something at night, like a freight or something, if it's like a pink and yellow or light green or something, like you're gonna lose it, and it's just like guesswork in the dark. Um, so I mean, there's just kind of aspects of it that I think are unique to it that kind of teach you, um, you know, I think it just brings you into color in a different way versus other mediums.
And we're going to explore that in your drawings. And what is so fascinating is that, again, I like this story because you're a self-taught artist. You were determined, and also that the culture itself was teaching you, right? And here we see when you start developing characters, you start doing your pieces with characters. Um, but actually, maybe that was misplaced. But we're looking at a couple more slides of your pieces. Here's your dog with the T-bone
Oh,
piece.
that was just a random dog when I went to go flick
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah,
It's interesting as a New Yorker when you look at this, and I'm looking at your work, and when you look at somebody's work, it triggers a whole library of years of things that you've looked at, of pieces that you've looked at. Um,
yeah.
and and when I look at your work, I see Chain, I see AOK, I see Dondi, I see Part. I see a history that's so familiar to me.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like I think that's probably because you're like standing on the shoulders of those people. Um, really, I mean that era. I think you basically have like stars, bubbles, arrows, little ice cream scoops, um, connections and, maybe little tridents or something. And like once it got to that level, like all those little things, polka dots, like I think that's, maybe like late 70s. Like I think that's where it kind of, that's the essence of like graffiti. Like
Yeah.
the all those elements and I it's kind of similar to maybe like tattooing where you're tattooing like traditional pieces that are have been done since like the 30s and 40s, and some people say, well, how does that advance it? It's like, well, it doesn't necessarily advance it, but also it's something that you can't ever like master. It's sort of like it's those that know can tell what's wrong with it or what's right with it, like it can look similar, but I think it takes a long time to be able to do it that way, and but thanks for that compliment. I mean, to be, I think those are all people I looked at and stuff, and there is a lot of emulation there, but you hope you try and like add some flavor to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like you said earlier, one of the things that I think makes the makes it different for you is color, right? And how you use color and style, because a lot of those writers didn't have as much options as you did back in the day. Um,
I,
so,
I mean, one
so
of one of my favorite
go on.
colorways or pieces was the train that Dondi and Kel did. That I think it was the two mini
The Too Many
one with,
Kel.
yeah, that the colorway on that it's almost similar to that one you're showing actually, except that they had that like, I don't know if it was like a light gray or something in there, but that one had such a like profound, like it just looks different than almost all those other like cars from that era, and like that colorway, that one sticks out to me as like one of my like favorite, just favorite cars, period. But yeah, it's colorways like that that I kind of was like gravitate towards, like consciously or subconsciously.
So I'd like to get into your illustrations and the the I want to know what, obviously you were influenced by cartoons on TV and also through graffiti, and you had mentioned that you weren't skilled at drawing. So how did you acquire the skills to finally do characters? Were you practicing on the walls? Were you keeping diaries and black books?
Um, I mean, I, like everything in that piece is like, reference. Like these aren't my, like the composition, and coloring and stuff is unique. And, the thinking of like sort of doing like a potluck of putting it all together is me. Those characters are like the girls from Bakshi, um, the top left character is like a Lemonious character. Um, that sort of wizard guy is from like a weird, um, like Disney comic or something. So I would just, to make these compositions, I would take characters like that and just kind of like, um, try and fit them in together. So I would just, ink them out, um, and then what kind of taught me how to draw was all the stuff that connects those characters, like the background elements, like the bubbles, the stars, the patterns, um, some of the cross hatching and stuff. Like by having to connect these sort of known characters with other elements, learning how to connect those and sort of improvise those little bits in between is what taught me how to draw. So it was kind of like, um, imitation to imitation sort of led me to learn how to do it.
And so now when we get into these fully illustrated drawings,
Mm-hmm.
which, boy, do they trigger a lot. And I'm sure some of our guests online will probably say the same thing. It reminds us of our youth, of the black books, of cartoons that we've all grew up watching. You really loaded up with everything we love and grew up with. Tell us about these drawings and this particular drawing, in fact.
Yeah, so this was like maybe the second one of these I had done. Um, and I sort of was evolving the idea on those pieces of paper, and then I came up with this idea that I would see like old black book drawings from like your era that really just stuck out, like the way the marker would sort of bleed through them, and some characters were like spot on while others were just like their version of it. And um, I thought, like, what if I were able to do that really big, like, you know, 18 by 25? And so I just started, putting stuff in like different corners of a huge piece of paper and trying to like give the feel of a black book page, but not necessarily like make it like so like the graffiti was marquee, like as far as the composition, I didn't want it to be like, oh, this is a giant piece of graffiti.
Right.
Like
And in the
this,
center, we're drawn to the Pink Panther, a,
right.
a, a very hip hop Pink Panther.
Yeah, like just trying to like think like what is this world? Where does all this stuff exist? And it's kind of like, these are like fever dreams of like writers, like this is all the stuff you kind of think in your head when you're painting, right? Like, it's all interconnected, like cartoons, you know, the 70s, 80s, comic books, um, some original characters and stuff, and then threading it together so it looks like it's all kind of a one continuous piece. And, when you talk about like color theory and stuff, like I would just guess on this, a lot of this. Like I would just ink it out and then, you know, like where that purple smoke trails and clouds around the Pink Panther is, like I didn't have that in mind. I just started doodling it and kind of like I would just let it kind of guide me. So, I think some people look at these and think they're super intricate and um, think, oh, like that's crazy, I did that. But really, I would they stay on my drawing table for long periods of time, and I come in and I chip away at them because I don't. It's not like I could like this full image is not inside my head. It takes time to sort of reveal it. Find stuff that works, and try and connect it.
And
And
so as we look at some of these drawings, in terms of your compositions and what you pull, um, are there deeper meanings to some of these things that, I mean, I guess we can pull certain things from it, right? Like, the guy on the edge of something, running away from, I guess, a vortex or a galaxy or
yeah, I
something.
mean, so that's a Steranko drawing. Um, you know, these are me picking, you know, certain things from comics and stuff that I liked, and then those vortexes and stuff weren't there, like that. Those just kind of got added in, um, and I guess as far as meaning, I think like just calling it like a fever dream is more appropriate. That they're not really symbolic because I'm always going for an aesthetic. Like I just like the way that guy looks, and then I add that smoke and make it look like it's nighttime and stuff. Which that wasn't a part of the original, but that's like a Philip Droulet character. Um, so it's kind of almost like sampling in a way. It's like I'm taking things that I like, or that are maybe more obscure, and like repurposing them together as a whole. Like everyone has seen probably Howard the Duck. I think Lee was one of the first people to do them,
Right.
do Howard the Duck lot. But it's kind of like you know Howard Duck as a part of this sort of like psychedelic nightmare thing happening it doesn't really mean anything other than just I think it looks good. You know, it just looks good. Um, so it's more of like I kind of approach them like they're just a challenge to make, to just to get from edge to edge takes so much like, you know, tinkering and stuff that like, you know, they as long as they look done and complete, I'm happy.
I mean, tremendous detail. How long do
Like all
these
those,
works take you?
I try and say they take about 40 hours. Um, but I'm not for sure. The fastest I think I've ever done one is like in 3 weeks. Um, this one, this one was pretty challenging. Like you know, all this like blending and stuff, like all that marker stuff is like self-taught. I always didn't know how people did stuff like that, and it took forever to kind of like really understand like markers. Um, but yeah, I get like this one. I think you know I found this like Frazetta Vampirella character, um, and put her on this checkerboard, and then I realized as I had done that checkerboard that I wanted to make it look shiny, like a marble, like waxed floor, and I had no clue how to do that.
Hmm.
And so I'm trying to figure out like how do you make like a shiny checker floor. Um, and I was stressing because I had completed the whole piece, and I had to use like a gel pen to get that like white effect, and I thought I was gonna ruin it, and you know after like 40 hours of working on it, so there's just like funny stuff with that.
Yeah,
Uh,
this drawing is loaded with great references from Funkadelic to you know, Jack Kirby to Bashki. Um, uh,
yeah,
how tell me
and
about that. Tell me about who you decide to pull into this conversation.
um, you know I would say not a lot gets past me in terms of like reference or composition. Like I really, you'll see people pull stuff from these artists all the time and try and pass it off as like their own, and I look at it more like these are kind of like, you know, original homage pieces. Um, you know, like all that background and stuff, that's original. Just the piece character, I think came from Mike Plug actually. So like, you know, I don't know. I got really into looking at, you know, if there was like a Bakshi movie or something, I would look and figure out who the like working studio animators were, and then looking up those people's work. Mike Plug's actually more responsible for that style than Bakshi is, in a lot of ways. And then there's a whole thing with, you know, him being friends with Bodhi and not including him on Wizards, but you know, it's all different. But yeah, I think you start to find that there's like, especially within like Marvel and in the comic stuff, like there's just certain illustrators or inkers that stand out more than others. Um, like John Buscema, Jim Starlin,
Yeah,
you know, and I just
John's
got,
name rings a bell.
yeah, like that Silver Surfer is like a John Buscema one. I think a lot of the more famous Howard the Duck covers are Buscema.
Hmm.
Um, that bottom left's like Mike Plug. Um, you know, so I would just figure out like who those people were and look up their work, and you know, and you know, like the, you know, you start to see like the Kirby Crackle, like how that has like this weird relationship with graffiti, you know,
Yeah,
um,
there's some
and
wonderful things in here. I'm pulling up on a detail which I really like right here, and it's so powerful. This little note right here you hit.
yeah, I mean, like it blows my mind that stuff like that isn't in museums, you know,
Hmm.
like for whatever reason, like comic art or lowbrow art, you know, it always has to be repurposed or done with, you know, some level of abstraction or something for it to be accepted. And I just look at these like masters and go, like that was just their weekly job, is just knock stuff out like this, you know. And when you kind of focus on just one panel or something, you just see how like fresh their work is.
Have you
Um,
tried to do anything like this as a mural?
um, you know, I'm sure there's writers that could do it. I don't think I could. Um, just because of like the inking detail. I could paint it like with brush. Um, and I would probably just like project it, use like a wax pencil, and then go in. Um, I'd like to. I mean, I
I mean, the
it's
details are phenomenal. It
yeah.
seems to me, if I look at the walls you've painted, uh, you have tremendous capacity to pull this off.
I mean, I'm thankful for your confidence. I don't know. I mean, I could do it, I guess, but I mean, it would just depend on scale, right? Like
Yeah,
like if you look at the outside wall of the museum,
yeah.
that one that Mast and Cess did, and I think Doves,
And yes, to
yeah, like there's, you know, like I could probably like mock this up and give it to those guys and they would do it. I don't know, like it's I yeah, I'm trying to do my stuff a little bit simpler just so because the detail stuff is so hard. There's people that do it really well, like Sophals from Australia does it really well. Um,
So tell me
but
about these works and when you started exhibiting them. You had mentioned you were, one of the uh, uh, moments in your early history that really pushed you was getting invited for a book. Uh,
yeah, that whole concept actually started because um, this artist Casey Ortiz, he's in D30 and he had moved out of the country and um, one day he hit me up like via email and was like, "Hey, I'm putting together this book, and it's graffiti writers who draw, and but there's no graffiti in it." And he was like, "You just need a page," and I forget the specs of what it was, but just send in a page, and he put it in this book. And the people that were in it were really good. There was Rhyme, some other people, and I was kind of taken back because I didn't understand why he picked me because I wasn't really drawing or anything at that time or showing anything like that, and it wasn't like I was secretly sitting on it. So I got really freaked out about this deadline, and that's when I did one of those first pages that you showed. And the book never came out, unfortunately. But just the fear of having that deadline um, freaked me out because I didn't want to look bad next to all these people I looked up to. Um, and so I did one of those like small 8.5 by 11 sheets of characters and stuff, and that's when these came out of it. Um,
and
yeah,
tell me about the opportunities of starting to exhibit them, and how viewing yourself as a legitimate artist.
yeah. I mean, I think just I was really humbled by the feedback I got because that last one featured that death part was done by Keo, and he had reached out and was just like, "Hey, I love these things. Like, would you want to send me that original, and I'll do a piece on it, and then I'll send it back to you, and we'll do prints." And I think we had some prints for during Basel of that piece. He had a show with like Chino and a couple other people, and Keo, saying like, "Hey, I want to do that," was just super humbling because I'm like, okay, like and he's also like someone that knows where all this reference is coming from and knows kind of like the weird backstory. He's an animation nerd as well, um, and I think Kaz had commented on one, um, and like that just blew me away. Like I was just really you know I liked that people understood why I was making them. They got like, oh, he's doing this like bugged out old like late 70s, 80s, like black book style and trying to make it big. Um, so it's not like I ever had to explain it, um, or provide some sort of context. The work just kind of would get out there, and then collectors started buying them, and um, like the Martinez Gallery had bought one. Another guy like has like a private collection with a bunch of Twist and Espo stuff. So that was really cool, and it's like hangs up next to those. Um, so they it wasn't hard to get people interested in it at all, which is nice. That's usually not the case with art, right? Um, and showing them. I think like my favorite part is having multiple originals next to each other on a wall, because then you just see kind of how big they are.
Right. I think one of the things, that's why I was asking you earlier, the scale must be so impressive because the size you mentioned to me it's a really nice presentation size.
Yeah, they're just huge. I mean, um, I think they're just uh, having something that's like multiple feet long that's just illustration and marker.
So
Um,
what keeps you from, well, let me not assume this, but have you done any on canvas? Have you translated this stuff onto canvas at all?
I mean, to get that effect, that's unique to marker, I don't think I would. I mean, I could do it digitally. Um, I've started experimenting around with that, but you know, um, right now I'm painting. My painting style, I usually use like a gouache or acrylic gouache, and it's more like a single panel of like an original character or something like wizards in different scenes and stuff. Um, and I just try and make it almost look like cell animation. Um, but yeah, as far as these like complex ones and stuff, I don't know. I guess maybe because the marker drawings like feature works of other people, and maybe I just don't want to, um, you know, even though they're original compositions and um, like kind of like spawn from you know me or whatever. Like I guess I'm cautious to not sort of betray that thing between artists of you know how much you're repurposing work for profit.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good point, right? Because you are repurposing uh, other people's art, but injecting, again, like you said, you can identify all the work you've done around a small part of somebody else's work. It's like
Yeah, or like
sampling.
yeah, like I mean that center part, that's like that character with the fingers over, like that's like my character. Like all the elements that surround this stuff, it's really just like some of the structural characters um, in that one. But yeah, it's I think what I'd like to do is just do like I have done some test prints, and they came out really really good. I was really surprised actually. Um, so I
Have
think
you
I'd
ever,
just like to
yeah,
do prints of these and like do signed editions and stuff like that.
have you ever thought of bringing these over to Comic Con?
Yeah, I mean that it's funny because I I've never actually got to show them to like that world. Like it's kind of been more in our kind of culture sphere, and I always wondered what people would think of them. Um, like um, oh, that's an original sketch I did for an album cover for Tommy Cruise. Um, that was pretty hyped on just because, and that is how his face looks. I was really scared he was going to get mad at me, but that's how he looks. So, um, uh,
As I look through these with you, it brings to mind it's two people, and one of them is with us, Cause 207, and Days, and it makes me think of the books and the way their books and the way they drew, as particularly CYA crew in terms of how they really like love stippling and lots of colors and of course the characters.
Yeah, I mean, and those guys are like, I'm huge fans of those guys, and like and I think it's cool that Cause kind of like came back, right? Like after a long hiatus,
Yeah.
um, and has like so many flicks of his trains and stuff, and like, um, I think it's just sort of art that like you think is cool from like 14 to 20,
Yeah.
like that imagery, but then when you really look back on it and you realize like it's aesthetically like, I don't know, like it's like fantasy sci-fi comic art, um like I said, I think when people really look at it and stuff, like it has something really cool about it that for whatever reason it gets kind of left out of the conversation or part of the sort of art market,
Hmm.
in weird ways, even though it's like used for so much, like Frazetta paintings have been responsible for like so much stuff in film, in his composition work and everything, and yet, you know, and he's kind of like maybe excluded because his you know his estate or whatever does do a pretty good job of working on it, but there's 10 other people like him that don't have any of that acclaim or um, sort of like cachet, and it just kind of blows my mind because they're talent wise they're just as good. That was a Black Sabbath illustration I did for a Black Sabbath group show, um, and yeah, I think that was just kind of like a no-brainer. Like I love Sabbath, and I mean, I grew up listening to a bunch of rap, but I'm a huge Sabbath fan, so it was kind of just like perfect opportunity. Like, when else am I going to get like the green light to just do like a full Sabbath illustration?
This is great because you're tapping into things that you knew as a kid, and this is what it seems to me like. All of this is tapping into nostalgia, personal things that you've grown up with, perhaps that all we've all grown up with, which leads me to tapping into your inner child, but then also how you tap into your child. And this project is a really fascinating project. It's a very touching project. Live Fast, Draw Young, the documentary about you and your son. And I want to talk a little bit about this, about getting your child interested in drawing early on, and connecting.
Yeah. So the quick version is, he was drawing a bunch of superheroes. He was like 5, 6, and he got bored. And but the funny part was he knew which superheroes were like cool and which ones were kind of nerdy. Like he didn't like Cyclops, but he liked Wolverine. He liked Batman, didn't like Robin. It was kind of funny. So he was asking me like who he should draw every day, and he got sick of drawing, the same superheroes or whatever. And so he was like, "Well, who should I draw?" And I just told him to draw Gucci Mane, which was just like, you know, I was listening to a lot of Gucci Mane at that time, and I showed him that photo of him with like the Wonder Woman bracelets, and he drew it pretty quickly, and I just posted it on Instagram, just a side by side, and it didn't like go viral or anything. It just was, a lot of people liked it or whatever. And so when he would come home from school, we would just think of like a different, you know, rap or hip hop album cover to draw, and we just kept doing it every couple days. And as he would draw it, I would put it on and like kind of explain it to him or try and show him a video, um, to give him some kind of context. And it just, like his versions of things, like the project's kind of interesting, right? It's kind of like it's me, showing my son what I was into when I was young, but also his version of how it looks is almost better than what it probably was in a lot of ways. Like his version of a Two Live Crew album cover comes off more bright and fun than the actual cover.
Right. So that brings up something interesting, right? Because of the profanity and the explicitness of the chosen subject that he's picking up on.
Yeah, I mean, there was people that kind of, put a lot of focus on that. I mean, our parenting style between his mom and I is, you know, he never he still to this day he doesn't swear a lot, I mean, he's 15. Um, and it's just kind of like just because there are, you know, negative aspects to the music doesn't, overrule that most of it is, positive and fun or funny, and that it's okay to like have sort of taboo subjects. What's not okay is to try and sort of say that those things are so taboo that no one can hear them, or uh, to try and kind of enforce that on other people. Um,
Right.
but
And he's so proud of his work. Forgive me, let me go back. I love that he's so proud of his drawings and invested in it. And it seems just as you found a way through art to discover yourself, this was a pathway for him. And in fact, it proved to be pretty cool for him in that he got to meet some of his favorite rappers or some of the rappers he illustrated and he also exhibited.
yeah, I mean, the funny thing, Carlos, about him is like he had like a natural like whatever vibe about it. Like he like I would say to say that he was like proud is kind of funny because he just thought it was life. Like he just thought that these opportunities that happened were kind of just like, yeah, he'll go with it. Um, but there were like, certain rappers and stuff like he really did get along with, and then he would meet them again.
Yeah, we just pull
And
up to that.
yeah, and so when he would meet him again, like, so this is the first time he meets Cameron, but he meets Cam like 2 or 3 years later after this, and he remembers it, and they remember him, and they have their own, like interaction. Like it's funny for them too, like we never looked at it like he got to meet them. It was more like they got to meet this like funny kid. And I think there was a part of it that I didn't really put out there because I just wanted to keep it fun. But there was an aspect of like, you know, like when I grew up, like, there was a lot of like parental advisory stuff and like that whole pushing campaign and anti-rap thing. And like, I think like that stuff touches into sort of like, you know, sort of like that can get into like, um, like there's just like stuff that like it's not just like whether there's cursing or whatnot. Like it starts getting into like racial issues and stuff where it's like,
Uh-huh.
I wanted to show that not only are these like rappers like, you know, talented for what they do, but also almost I would say 90% of them were like amazing dads as well. And that doesn't necessarily jive with the persona or the public perception of like what a rapper is or something. Like at the end of the day, like they were all like super involved fathers too. Like they would show me pictures of their kids and stuff. So it was kind of interesting to kind of like try and turn that on its head a little bit. But again, we didn't try and like lean too heavy in that because you know, it's we try and keep it fun.
It's what a like I said, it's really terrific that you've handed this gift of self-expression to your kid, exposure to the graffiti culture and the hip hop culture, and he'll figure out his life his way, right? He's probably on to the next thing already.
Yeah, and it was super fun and stuff, and we just naturally let it kind of run its course. He's painted a couple pieces and stuff, um, and I made sure like he outlined the whole thing. It was pretty funny because I thought people wouldn't believe that he outlined his piece, so I filmed it. So he likes using spray paint and stuff, but again, it's
Uh-huh.
kind of like if he gets into it, cool. But I'm certainly not gonna like be like, hey, you got to do graffiti like it's like you know doing like piano lessons or something. Um, you kind of it's well, it certainly wouldn't be fun for me, to
Of course, now turning back to your work, let's explore some of these later works on paper. Uh,
yeah, this is that's like the first wizard character I came up with. Um, I started a series of like original wizard characters and just kind of got into like this world of just like where these wizards exist and like I always looked for them and try and referencing other work, and so I kind of pushed myself to actually come up with my own like world of wizards, um, and it took me a bit, like some of the first iterations of them are kind of janky, but I started to figure out like the way their eyes work, the way their fingers are, the sort of color palette, um, and I that's when I started beginning to use a paintbrush a lot. Started off using like latex and stuff, and brushing, um, murals and stuff like that. But then really fell in love with like acrylic gouache and gouache. Um, I like anything that's opaque and stuff. So I just kind of this continuing series, and I'm still doing them today. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like the stuff I um, really pushed myself to do is just come up with this like make my own world, like we can do Bodhi characters till we're, you know, it's always fun to do them, but I kind of wanted to come up with ones that were my own. So um, each of these are just kind of like me trying to find my way with a brush. Um,
I have a question for you. This is a very interesting thing because you mentioned you found this character, the wizard, right? That
mhm.
becomes a kind of an icon and almost is it something that can become? I'm trying to place this kind of like the replacement of the piece, the replacement of the tag that you would probably put up wizards up on the wall as opposed to doing a full piece.
Yeah, I mean, like I would, yeah, I think the goal is to kind of like create characters that are kind of like that you know make you want to paint them. Like I'd be really high. Like people have asked to like get them tattooed and stuff. Like I like kind of like it's like making your own world of it. And yeah, I mean like ultimately, I would like to just paint those, and flesh out that world more and more and not necessarily like paint
So
pieces
the
or
so the larger
yeah.
works that we saw earlier, is that something? Is that a series that you've already flushed out of your system? Uh,
No, I mean I'll keep doing them, I think. But like I was saying, like I think um, that one's actually pretty big. That's like a 18 by 24. And a lot of these use a like really bright color, so the camera has a lot of trouble picking them up. But um, yeah, I think like I'll keep doing the marker pieces and stuff. I'm hoping to find um, a way to kind of showcase those more and do like a show with all of them. I've sold a good amount of them too, like originals, which I somewhat regret. Sometimes I wish I had them all, but
have you considered digital?
yeah, I mean, I've scanned them all, thankfully. Like before I would sell one, like I would do like a 600 DPI scan so I have it. Um, but yeah, I think like doing a show with some originals and some prints, um, would be ideal. But yeah, I think like I just look at them as like different series. Like the Magic Marker series is cool. That these wizards are cool. Um, but I'm also like trying to paint abstracts and stuff too. So I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm gonna keep trying to make different series of things and just let the work kind of guide me.
Yeah, it's a good way to go about it, and instead of trying to find a gimmick, so to speak, right? That you fall into your natural talents, and your authenticity.
Yeah, I think, you know, um, also trying to push just one thing and hope that it just becomes this brand or, something like that. I think I've seen a lot of people um, either give up on something too soon and not waiting for the magic to happen. And then I've seen other people that work super hard and push something for 15, 20 years. Like there's no real, I think we talked about that some, like in terms of like, how do you navigate like the art world and the art market, and like, do you, you know, kind of like put all your eggs into one basket and hope that you get put on or get some certain opportunity, like, but I think you really just have to, keep at it. And, I think like trying different styles, pushing yourself, like only like good stuff will come from that. It's not like you're gonna like, ever regret like pushing yourself into doing different types of work and not just sticking with one series or one kind of like gimmick, as you said.
Right, and messaging, and this is a powerful one. This T-shirt that you designed, Thoughts and Prayer T-shirt with the bulletproof vest, really to the point, really powerful. Tell me about this.
Yeah, that was the first time I tried to do. I did just an image with the vest and the letters painted on, and that was maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, and it was kind of after, like maybe I forget which shootings some had gone on, but I did it, and a bunch of people had reached out about it. Someone had said that they like wanted to use it for like a certain rapper, for like their tour thing, and it was kind of being pushed around. Um, my buddy had shown it to Virgil Abloh, and he liked it or something, and so there was kind of like this, idea that maybe it would like be used for like an artist in like a video or something. And then after that cycle kind of died down, um, some buddies from Seattle had asked if they could use it for a shirt, and it was actually for back to school. Um, right around back to school time it happened, and they put it out, and it got a lot of support, from parents and stuff. And I'm not like anti-gun per se. I don't think that I personally don't own any, but I it's more just like the idea that the only answer to that is just thoughts and prayers. It's kind of like that idea of just, yeah, thanks for nothing. Like that's
Yeah, and
literally.
given that you did such a succinct messaging, branding of a powerful subject, have you thought about leaning into that, into kind of a social commentary in your work?
I I didn't send any over. I did do a lot of like drawings that were based off like social commentary, usually like police brutality stuff. Um, when those incidents would happen, like I try to use like satire a bit. But I think, really it's hard to kind of say like, oh, like I'm going to start doing like conceptual pieces. And, I think, at least in my head, what probably prevents me from doing it is when you see like a body, like my body of work, and it's so focused on illustration and graffiti and cartoons and stuff like that, that I don't know if it would be taken seriously if it were to be next to each other. Um, and that could just be like, just me tripping myself out or what have you. But you know, I used to not think conceptual art was cool or abstract art was cool, and it was really in the last like couple years. Um, I had some friends that were kind of like making waves in there, and I would go hang out at their studio and stuff and learn about it. And I just like, I'm just really into it as far as whether or not that turns into like some part of my career, I couldn't say, but um, I find it's a definitely like a, you know, rewarding like field of art. Like I think there's a, you know, it's super fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think it's, I would just say this to you, you know, given, like you said, you know, you want to make, you want to, your career and your art to be consistent and stuff like that. But if you have the inclination, right, sometimes we have this urge to put something out there that's commentary that breaks from the normal path that we're on, and to afford yourself that, because yet that's another path of your truth, right, of what you're experiencing in life.
Yeah, we kind of spoke on that earlier, like if, with the whole like if if you're being honest about your work and like what you're into and stuff, like I think the work shows that, and the closer you are to being your true self, I think the better your work just is, because there's some sort of like synchronicity to that, where like I always used to bug out on like, do at a certain point you see a lot of people turn to abstracts and stuff, and it's like, do are they saying that they're now painting that way because they're passionate about it, or is it because they know it'll sell? You know,
Mm,
and sort of in these subliminal ways where it's like, well, maybe I'll do this because my other stuff isn't selling. You know, and where does that sort of that seed or that inception of doubt come? You know, where the art market kind of convinces you like, well, maybe I should switch
right.
to this other style. You know, whereas, you know, I think maybe just doing one or two conceptual pieces every once in a while and just letting them kind of rock and
Yeah.
enjoying it, like I think that's better for me, you know. But
Right. Yeah. Isn't it something interesting about, like, as we think about your arc, right? The that late in life you find art, you find your inner child, and then like you do this amazing work that taps into this joyous place of graffiti, of being out there in the streets with the kids and learning this craft. And then you find it's a rabbit hole where you start learning about illustrators and the comic book history, and it's kind of a pain-free space as opposed to what art market demands maybe, right?
yeah, I think so. I mean, like, you know, I think there's just yeah, I mean, I would just always encourage someone to be like make the art or push the art that you want to be paid to do.
Mm.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like force the market to like that, you know? I mean, sure, it's scary, and like, you know, people could say they don't like it or whatever, but it, you know, like um I think, you know, the stuff that I get hyped and geeked on and stuff, like I know there's a ton of people that still do, you know, like they were saying, like you get to be 40 and it's like you're still talking about graffiti, and it's like, or you're still painting it, you know, it's like,
Yeah. Well, here's two things in your favor, my friend.
yeah,
You have a built-in audience for a lifetime, because young kids will always love wizards. They'll always love color. They'll always love superheroes, and they'll love graffiti. So
yeah,
that's win, 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 win.
yeah, for sure.
And yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'm not, I won't be mad at it, you know. I'm gonna, there's, and it's funny like that it takes that many years to like get good at it. You know, like, you know, like yeah,
I still think I'm a toy. Many
yeah,
people here will, some people here will confirm that I'm still trying to be good, because then you know the talent pool, right? It keeps nurturing itself, and the bar keeps getting set so high, and I find myself continually learning and feeling somewhat inadequate, right? By the talent that's out there. But I also think very differently, right? I'm more an analytical brain kind of person. But I just think about looking at your work, right? About, and I said this earlier, the joy, the triggers, that all these characters, they're loaded with so much for me, that is joyous and free, of some of that analytical thinking, right? And that's what I really appreciate about it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I think, you know, ideally, like that is the space I'm trying to always go to, you know, is that sort of like carefree, 16. I mean, you generationally, it's like I didn't get to like live in New York, in the like early 80s, 70s, but it's like kind of like you can always kind of go there in your mind, you
Yeah,
know.
but I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
No,
I'm
no,
sorry to say
yeah,
that. I,
yeah,
I mean, as
it's
glorious as they were those days, in ways that's you don't want to wish that on
no,
anyone.
the pieces look great, but I feel like New York was not fun
Yeah,
to deal with, but yeah, but I think like that Saturday morning cartoon energy, like because when you're a kid, like you think magic's real,
oh yeah. Oh,
and like
as an adult, I still think it's real.
yeah, exactly. But it's like you're allowed to think it's real. Like no one pushes
Ah,
back against that.
true.
And then as you get older, you realize you've been lied to, that life's a trick, and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean,
And, and just to interrupt you on that thought for a second, because what's interesting is this sorcery of sorts that must have been sorcery to your son. All of a sudden, you show him, you pull the curtain back, and you show him this sorcery, how to create from nothing, how to create.
yeah, I think just and also like we were so adamant about it, like it has to be fun. Like you can't fake fun, like and I think that comes off in it. Like so it's like it can't be a job and it can't be it has to sort of have that magic to it. It's like, I would kind of explain and be like, look, if you draw this and we, put it out there, like something might happen from it, and so many crazy things happen just because of drawing. We were in like a 450 square foot apartment in Seattle, you know, at that time,
Mm.
and then, Tribeca, Tokyo, like all that stuff happens because of drawings in this little Tokyo. It's like it is sorcery, at that point,
Yeah,
really,
phenomenal, phenomenal. Listen, I want to wind this up, and I want to thank you on behalf of the Museum of Graffiti, our friends and staff who are on board right now. I've really enjoyed your story and your work. Really wish you all the best moving forward, and I'm glad we get to kind of share this story with everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. It's a truly an honor, and like hanging out with all you guys at the graffiti. I'm like just hyped, like the fact that the Museum of Graffiti is actually like good. Like it doesn't actually like to finally have a space. Like that just blew my mind being there and like opening night, meeting everybody. Like um, it's just a super cool group and what you guys are doing over there. But yeah, I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, by kids for kids, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
The misfits have kicked the door down and
Yeah, just
formed.
that, just to have your own clubhouse that's actually good and on par with other museums. Like just the flow of it,
Yeah.
the
Well,
the execution of it and stuff. Like it was just cool. But
I appreciate you saying that, and I hope that Kat and Allison hear that as well, because they work
yeah,
so hard. The whole staff is working hard over there, and I'm doing my best over here to stay engaged with you guys.
yeah,
And as always, a pleasure, to get to learn,
yeah.
get to learn something new about you and your art and your journey so far. So thanks again.
All right. Well, thanks so much for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Take care, brother.
All right.
Peace.
Cheers.